Welcome back to the shop, my friends. Steve here, and in today's video we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into color theory and skin tone values. And that's because I'm going to be painting up the Communicant from Trench Crusade. Now in the game this guy is huge, and it's because he consumes the flesh and the blood of the Metachrist, which allows him to grow to a gigantic size, but also if he's within a certain distance of particular characters, he's able to take their damage upon him and then use it and regenerate. Because of that, I didn't want his skin tones to really look alive, not a lot of warmth to them, more of a Frankenstein's monster undead, so a lot of blues and purples. And to help me out with that, I'm bringing in Arnold. I took this picture of Conan into Photoshop and I changed the hue, value, and saturation to give it more of a cool tone. And having a reference is always important when it comes to artistic things because it's always going to be more accurate than what you're going to come up with in your head. This way I can also look at shadows and highlights and see exactly what kind of a color value I'm going for. So I want to show you what it takes to kind of do an undead skin but has a little bit of warmth to it. Let's go ahead and get started. I printed my miniature off, gave him a custom base, and sprayed on some self-etching primer and Krylon red oxide primer. Now the first color I'm going to be putting down is a brown rose from Vallejo, and this is on the warmer side, but that's going to work out perfect for us because in the shadowed areas where we are going to have our blues and our purples, it's still going to have that little bit of warmth, so it's not going to appear flat. Some Vallejo white gray is going to be dry brushed as a highlight onto the skin. Now it is important to have a little bit of moisture but not too much, and that's why I don't use a paper towel when dry brushing. The pigment is worked pretty aggressively into the brush and then applied to the upmost highlights on the model. Now, I don't really tend to use the speed paints or the contrast paints as a Slapchop, more as a just general wash, and it's because the pigment count is still really good in these. It's just been thinned down, but not with water, so you're not destroying the overall look. In this case, I'm going to be doing a 2-to-1 of the Purple Swarm and Warrior skin onto the entire model surface. A second wash is applied to some of the areas that I want to be a little bit darker. The Vallejo brown rose that I used in the very beginning is watered down and then re-established as a highlight. At this point I'm picking out bulk muscle structures that are going to be illuminated from a light source up above. Next up, I'm going to be adding the speed paints to the Vallejo that I'd used in the beginning. Not a lot, just a little bit to tint this. This is going to be used in the shadowed areas, but because I'm using that same color from the beginning and the same color from the washes, it's going to be a lot more harmonious. It's not going to be a huge shift in that overall color value. The brown rose in the warrior skin is also going to be made into a glaze. This glaze will be applied more to the midtones of each muscle. I'm trying to smooth out that transition from the top being the brown rose highlight to the bottom being that purple glaze. To pump this warm tone highlight even further, I'm going to be applying some Vallejo light flesh. This pigment is going to be thinned with some medium, and as you can tell, I'm a lot more selective of where this highlight is going to be placed on each muscle. Some Duncan Rhodes Flesh Wash is going to be used on his elbows, underneath the muscles, and especially around the crosses, anywhere that I want warmer values. But because this is a wash, it's not going to cover, it's still just going to tint these darker areas. And that's important because we don't want to cover them up at this point. We're starting to get some really good color values going on, but we want that little bit of warmth just to make it more visually interesting. This next highlight is going to be some of the Vallejo light flesh also mixed with that speed paint warrior skin. This is going to be applied to the middle to the top of each muscle as an upward facing light source. To give the model more of a bluish tint to it, we're going to be mixing together some of the light flesh from Vallejo and some Beowulf Blue speed paint. Once again, adding a little bit of the speed paint to the Vallejo. This is a higher pigment count. This pigment has not been watered down. It's just the mixture that's already within the bottle. So it's not going to kill and desaturate this particular color. We can utilize this in our shadows, and it's still going to appear somewhat vibrant, even as a glaze. Adding this Beowulf glaze to the shadows really starts to knock back those reddish tones, and this is where all the different layers really start coming into play. Just like your flesh tone, it's not just one color. There's all kinds of underlying blues and reds and yellows and greens. This gives the skin a lot more depth. As a final highlight to the skin, I'm going to be using Vallejo brand's white gray with a little bit of Beowulf blue mixed in. This little bit of blue makes sure that the white doesn't overtly stand out way too much by slightly desaturating it, but also calling to all of the other colors that we've already used on the piece. This is the point where you want to use your smallest brush and the most thinned down glaze. You do not have to apply this all at once. I would personally recommend to work in multiple layers of glazes all around the piece. Apply your highlights in key areas and then come back and apply more. And with the cloth painted, you can really start to see how that skin has a lot going on. Now it's time to grunge him up some, so some Liquitex Mars Black and Burnt Sienna are going to be used for the mud and the splatter textures. This is achieved by taking a ratty brush and flicking the paint against the surface. If you get paint in spots you don't want, just have a damp brush nearby and wipe off those areas. Now when it comes to working with Perma Blood, it is a thicker liquid, so you could always go with a speed paint like Slaughter Red to sketch out where you want the blood to go in, and then go back with your Perma Blood to bulk up those areas. After I used the speed paint to map out how I wanted the blood to flow, then I could apply thin layers of the Perma Blood on top. Now this liquid is designed for applications much larger than this, so it does dry very fast, so I'd recommend to have some water nearby to continually wash your brush out. But the things I love about Perma Blood is that the liquid is thick and it will continue to have this awesome looking shine. So you all can see what it takes to make your skin tones look both dead and alive. And of course, what it really comes down to is how much time and effort do you want to spend on your skin tones, glazing, building up volumes around each individual muscle, and making it look as smooth as possible. Every now and then, though, I say that it's a fun exercise to not just paint the entire model start to finish, but focus on one particular aspect of that model and refine it as much as you can. So, hopefully you all enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you next time.